What's going on, YouTube? So we ditched the earmuffs and came out here to beautiful and warm San Antonio, Texas to check out the first 2021 model year vehicle on sale in the US, this all-new Kia Seltos. Now this is a brand new nameplate for the brand, and if you're wondering where it fits into the current lineup, it is sized and priced right in between the Soul and the Sportage. But Kia has made sure to give each offering its own unique characteristics, and the Seltos includes some nice influence from the Telluride. So with that all said, let's see if the Seltos can jump to the top of its class just like the Telluride did. All right, so getting started here with the exterior design. What you'll notice right off the bat is we do have Kia's latest rendition of the Tiger Nose grille. However, it is pretty large. It does cover most of the front end. Now, all the trim levels except for the very base LX get this exact grille here. However, the LX does have a slightly different interior finish. Now that we're over here to the headlights, I will mention that this is the premium bi-LED setup. This comes on the SX only. And if you go for one of the lower trim levels, that's where you'll get halogen headlights. But the really cool element that I absolutely have to point out is this light extension. It's a little hard to see, but the daytime running light runs through here, and then as it transitions to the grille, it continues all the way out to here. So this is a really cool element, and it looks awesome at nighttime. And then dropping down on the face here, you will find fog lights on all but the base LX trim. However, you will have to get the SX trim if you want LEDs. And then overall, I just want to talk about kind of how rugged this vehicle looks. It has a class-leading 28-degree approach angle and a 7.2-inch ground clearance, which is better than most in the class. And that really just makes this look like a more substantial SUV than most of the kind of low-riding competition. Now coming down here to the wheels, one of the nice things about this new Seltos is that you skip like ugly little tiny wheels with ugly hubcaps. You go straight to 17-inch alloys even on the base LX and the S trim level. Now when you go up to the EX, you have a contrasting 17-inch alloy, and when you go up to the SX or the S with the turbo engine, that's where you'll get these really nice looking 18-inch contrast alloys. And then coming up here to your mirrors, they are heated with the LED turn signals on all but the LX trim level. And you will also find blind spot monitoring built into the mirror if you go for the S turbo trim or up.
So here at the rear design, I have to go ahead and start it out with a compliment because honestly, most in this class have a very kind of city-focused look, and I do think that this Seltos has a very handsome and rugged design, which is quite unique for this segment. And as far as the features are concerned back here, we do have this nice silver trim going across the back for all of the models, and then turning over to the taillights, these are going to be LED on all but the very base LX, but probably the most unique feature about this is that you can have the two-tone design. As you can see, this SX has opted for the black cherry roof. You can get this option or a white roof option, which looks really quite unique, and that is available on the S and SX trims. Now, I'm not going to discuss the full pricing right here because that will come later in the video, but I do need to talk about kind of the trim level structure with this new Seltos. You kind of have two dual base trims. The LX and S actually cost the same amount, but it's important to mention here because the LX is going to miss out on Kia's DriveWise Plus safety systems, and in addition to that, this top-end SX trim will also add adaptive cruise control to that. Well guys, that sums up all the exterior about this all-new Seltos. So now let's go ahead and hop inside and see all the value Kia has put in there.
So walking up to the all-new Kia Seltos, you will notice their smart entry system on both the EX and the SX trim levels. And one important difference here you may be noticing is that the remote start system is on the key fob now. That's new for the entire Kia brand, and hopefully will also roll out to the 2021 Telluride and other Kia models. Now to get inside the vehicle itself, you will just press this black button here since there's not a sensor behind the handle. Alright, so taking our first look inside the Seltos, what you'll immediately notice is that it has a very upscale design for something in this class of vehicle. Now, as far as the color and material options that Kia is offering, what you'll be looking at is cloth seating on the LX trim in black only. Going for the S trim will get you a leatherette and cloth combination seat that's finished in black with special blue accenting. And then when you go for the EX and the SX trim level, you'll also get the Sofino leatherette, and that comes in this black or a gray option. Now turning over here to your door trim, it is very nicely finished. As you can see, you have the leather armrest with the color contrast stitching. It is all leather through here as well, though the top part is hard touch. As far as your windows, it is one touch automatic for just the driver window. And then coming down here to your seat, this is a 10-way power adjusting seat with 2-way lumbar support. This is standard on EX and SX trim levels. The other trims come with a 6-way manual seat. And then like I was saying, this is Kia's leatherette, but it does still feel very realistic and definitely has an attractive aesthetic here with the kind of diamond shapes inside of it. Now, I already mentioned the premium design. However, the materials are also very premium for the class of vehicle. Now, as expected, all the upper part of the dashboard here is hard touch. However, when we drop down here to the middle on the SX trim, we do have a leatherette with some stitching. And then dropping down from here, we have extensive use of some piano black trim. And everything does fit together very nicely and feels really, really solid. Now on the EX and SX trim, press the button to start. Now as far as your gauge setup here, this is the premium gauge setup on the SX only with a 7-inch display. All your other trims are going to come with a smaller 3.5-inch display. Now, one thing worth mentioning is that a head-up display is not available on the Seltos, even though it is available on the lower level Kia Soul. And then coming back to the steering wheel, it is nicely leather-wrapped on all but the very base LX trim level. As you can see, it does have Kia's newest premium-looking design. However, once again, just like the head-up display, you cannot get a heated steering wheel like you can get on the Soul. Alright, so let's go ahead and talk about storage, which is very important for any kind of SUV, even a smaller one like the Seltos. So first looking into your center console here, this is quite deep. You have a nice felt lining down at the bottom as well. Up in front of that, we have a little storage right here, 2 large cup holders. And then up in the front, we have another large storage bin with a charging USB, a regular USB, and a 12-volt outlet. Plus, if you go for either the EX or the SX trim, that's where you get a Qi wireless phone charging pad that runs right across here to stick your phone. Now coming back to this shifter, really like this shifter. It is basically straight off the Telluride, so it has the same premium feel. Of course, you just pull back to D for drive. You can bump over here to the left if you want to shift manually right here, but there are never any paddle shifters on the steering wheel. And then when we go into reverse, you will find a standard backup camera across all the trim levels, and we do also have active trajectory as well. Definitely a very clear resolution, I will mention. The struggle is real when you try to jump, trying to get to the top of the hay bale to set down. And then you will also notice we have an electronic parking brake and an auto brake hold function right here. Now kind of moving up here to some of the buttons surrounding the shifter, we have the drive mode select. There are 3 different drive modes. We'll talk about this in the test drive, but normal, smart, and sport mode. You also notice 3-stage seat heating if you go for the EX trim or the SX trim level. And then moving up to the main climate control setup here, you will get a single zone automatic setup if you go for that same EX or SX trim level. Otherwise it will be manual. And like I was mentioning, it is single zone, so you just adjust the temperature with this one knob here, and then all your other adjustments are located physically right there. And now that brings us to the next thing up the dashboard, which is our audio systems. Now, the vast majority of the trim levels, they come with a standard 6-speaker sound system. However, if you choose the top trim level, the SX, that's where you'll get a Bose sound system. That's the first ever Bose sound system inside of a Kia. So let's go ahead and take a sample of that. I have to say, sound quality of this system is excellent, especially for this category of vehicle. Now, there's one other important thing to mention about this sound system. Like the Kia Soul, it does come with the mood lighting setup. So basically, when you turn up the volume to get louder, you will see the speakers and some of the lighting inside of the vehicle. It will glow different types of colors. Definitely a very cool touch. Alright, so now that brings us up here to our Kia Yuvo system. Now, what you're probably noticing right off the bat is just how large this display is. This is 10.25 inches, which is actually the same size as in the Kia Telluride, and it is the largest display offered in this class of vehicle. This comes standard on the SX trim level, and then all your other trim levels, those will come standard with an 8-inch display, which is still pretty large for the class. Now, one of the nice features of this system is that we have split screen ability. So what we can do is have things like our navigation map up, and then we can also pull up secondary information over here on the side, just so we have two different types of information up at the same time. Now, navigation, you're probably noticing here, this is standard on just the SX only. However, the other trim levels, they still come with Android Auto and Apple CarPlay, so you'll always have access to either Apple or Google Maps. But moving on beyond that, you will find an auto-dimming mirror here on the SX trim level. And you're probably noticing that even here on this fully loaded model, we actually do not have a moonroof. The reason why is because you cannot pair the moonroof with the color contrast roof at this time. But if you want to go without the color contrast roof, you can add a moonroof to the SX trim for $700, or it is standard on the EX trim. Alrighty, so that is going to do it for the front parts of this premium Seltos cabin. So now I'll go ahead and hand it off to Mason, who will check out all the utility in the back.
So hopping back in the rear seat of the Seltos, my first impression is definitely that it's a spacious offering, especially for this segment of vehicle. But as far as the features that they've thrown in on this top-end model, we do have rear vents, as well as a USB port, and I say top-end model loosely because that is actually included on the EX trims and higher. And then down below that, you do have a nice little storage area, as well as a center armrest and your assist grip. But now, as far as the actual space is concerned, you are going to find 38 inches of both leg and headroom, which is definitely positioning it at the top end of the class. So behind rear seating position, I have, I'd say, at least 6 to 7 inches of rear leg room, and my feet can easily slide up underneath the seat. So you are going to find a pretty rare amount of space back here, especially for this class of vehicle. Now, walking up to the tailgate, it is going to be manual across all of the trim levels, which is expected for the class. But what is not expected for the class is just how much space is back here. You're going to find 27 cubic feet of space behind the second row seats, and that expands to 63 cubic feet if you fold the seats. Now, like I was mentioning, that's honestly way bigger than most of the rivals, and it can even be bigger than a segment above. And as far as how they finish it back here, it is finished nicely, since you do have a cargo cover. And up underneath of the floor, we do have a spare tire. But one interesting thing about this floor is that you can actually kind of drop it down to give you more space. Right now it's in the mode to make it flat with the seats if you fold them, but you can actually drop it down another level to give more cargo space. Now here at the passenger seat, it is four-way manually adjusting across all the models. And in front of you, you do have a pretty good sized glove box. It is dampened. And up top, we do have a sun visor with the light and mirror. And it does also detach as well as extend. But anyway, guys, that sums up all of the rear areas of the Seltos. So now let's go ahead and get out on the road and see how that turbo engine performs.
Our first acceleration in the turbo Kia Seltos. This is a 1.6 liter turbo, 175 horsepower, 195 pound-feet of torque. You know, it certainly feels pretty strong.
Yeah.
Definitely the torque too. I kind of wasn't expecting that. A lot in this class, they just don't get the job done.
Yeah, this turbo engine is actually kind of rare for this class. I don't know if it's the only one or not, but it's definitely a rare feature to have in this class of vehicle because, like you said, most of the time they're just concerned about fuel economy and getting you from point A to point B. Definitely not much enjoyment factor, but that acceleration was actually really impressive. Now, if you don't opt for that turbo engine, which will probably be the vast majority of Seltoses, whatever, let us know what you think it is in the comments below, whatever. But if you don't opt for that, you're going to get, you know, the familiar Hyundai Kia 2-liter 4-cylinder engine. It's 146 horsepower and 132 pound-feet of torque. So you're going to find quite a bit of power benefit if you go for the turbo, but it's very class competitive still, even if you go for the weaker engine.
Right, it's definitely really good that Kia is offering this upgraded engine. Like he was saying earlier, very uncommon for the class.
Yeah.
Route recalculating. Continue on current road for about 3 miles.
Sorry, the GPS. Oh, fighting these things. They won't shut up for even just a second. Anyways, what I was going to say is talking about the transmission. Now, when you go for the turbo model, there is more benefit than just getting more power.
Yeah.
Kia throws in a 7-speed dual-clutch automatic transmission. Now, the standard model, it comes with a continuously variable transmission. So you are definitely benefiting in that regard because you're getting, you know, a traditional stepped transmission, which is obviously a lot more fun. That's why it's in the turbo engine, and a lot of you guys prefer that to a CVT. We didn't get the chance to sample that base powertrain with the CVT. You know, but as far as this really makes for a good pairing. Very responsive. I'm quite impressed by this dual clutch. Really fires off shifts very quickly, and you know, it keeps this engine right in its power band, so you can just put your foot down, you know, and then get a surge of power right away.
You know, and with this engine, you have a lot of torque too, so it really does push you back in your seat. You know, but we've been talking a lot about the performance and such of this new Seltos because we do have this turbo engine, but, you know, for the vast majority of you guys, this is what you're going to be doing. You're going to be, you know, cruising down the highway. We will do some city driving in just a minute. And, you know, it really does that really well. You know, as you can tell up here at highway speeds, it's very quiet inside of this cabin, especially for this class of vehicle, and it's also extremely smooth. That was honestly one of the first things that we noticed when we got inside. Was, you know, we went on the freeway, we were hitting all the bumps and stuff, and it was like handling it like a really well. It was almost like a class above. It was really quite impressive, you know, that a car in this segment can have a ride this smooth. Alright, so we've switched driving positions here, and now I'm behind the wheel, and we do have just a few more things to talk about with this all-new Seltos. And that right there is one of the things that we do need to talk about, the auto start-stop system. So it has turned off, and then when traffic starts moving, we'll see how smooth it is. Okay, so we did just restart there, and I have to say, definitely one of the smoothest auto start-stop systems. You know, this is a very small engine, and typically small engines, you know, do start up kind of smooth because they're small, and this is definitely one of those.
Yeah, it's good, and as we were driving around other instances, it does seem to be a repeatable. Some of them are kind of like, one time it'll be really rough, the next time it'll be smooth. This one is consistently, you know, very smooth for a mainstream vehicle. Leading vehicle. Now that is actually one important thing. I don't know if we mentioned throughout the review that, you know, this is one of the, you know, Kia's things is actually, they said it was for, you know, texters or whatever at the red lights, where, you know, they don't accelerate when they don't notice that someone is moving. And right then and there, I didn't immediately accelerate when the car in front of me moved. So it actually went ahead and beeped and warned me that the car in front of us had started moving, which is, honestly, more cars should have this, because I get tired of the people texting at the red lights. Don't you wish that more people, I mean, seriously, had that? Please add this to more vehicles, because I get so sick and tired of that. You know, they don't accelerate and then it turns red on me and then they get to go. But, you know, anyway, enough with my rant, but that is, you know, a nice feature that this car does have. Now, of course, in a subcompact crossover, as well as most vehicles, fuel economy is pretty important. So we'll go ahead and discuss the ratings. Basically, the Seltos does identical. I checked several different competitors, and with all-wheel drive, it ranks identically to those same competitors. So what you're looking at with the standard 2-liter engine that most of the models will have is going to be 29 city, 34 highway, 31 combined if you go with the front-wheel drive version, and then 27 city, 31 highway, 29 combined if you go with the all-wheel drive version. Again, the vast majority of the trims, besides for that S, come standard with all-wheel drive. Now this 1.6 liter turbo, obviously that's going to be less efficient, so you're going to come in at 25 city, 30 highway, 27 combined, which actually is not a bad penalty for the extra power and the dual clutch, so you're looking at 2 combined less. But all in all, I have to say we've both been very impressed during our time with this Kia Seltos. You know, really the main thing I think that kind of summarizes this vehicle best is that it feels a class above. You know, it really it has a lot of premium characteristics. You can feel a little bit of Telluride influence in it, actually. You know, and it does have, of course, with this turbo engine and dual clutch, quite an advantage over a lot of the competition. And I think that's really its unique selling points, is having that turbo engine, having the dual clutch, having all-wheel drive on most of the trim levels, of course, in typical Kia fashion, having a lot of equipment, a lot of style, and it does all that, you know, basically at the same or less price point than all the competition. Alrighty, so I'm sure you're probably curious as to the pricing for this all-new Seltos, and I'm happy to report that it does display the typical Kia value. So for the LX trim, that's going to start at $21,990. As I mentioned earlier in the video, the S is exactly the same cost, except it comes with front-wheel drive. It's the only trim to come standard with front-wheel drive. The rest of them do have all-wheel drive standard, so that's something to keep in mind. If you go for the S Turbo, that's going to be $25,490. The EX is $25,290, and then finally you have the SX, which is what we have here, and that's $27,890.
Now, in addition to that price, we do have a few options. So we have the two-tone roof, which is $345, as well as carpet floor mats, and then the destination charge of $1,120 to bring this one as equipped to $29,485. Which honestly is very class competitive. It's actually a little bit less than some of its rivals, and you do get that turbo engine with this top-end model that a lot of the rivals will not offer, and some don't even offer all-wheel drive. Well guys, we've enjoyed watching this in-depth look at the 2021 Kia Seltos SX Turbo. We really appreciate you watching, and if you haven't already, be sure to hit that subscribe button down below, and we'll catch you next time as we sample more of the latest automotive delicacies.